Welcome to the Potential Leader Lab, and I'm your host, Perry Maughmer. As always, words create worlds, and we're always in the act of realizing our potential as a leader. And the lab is kind of meant to be a mental state, not a physical location, obviously, in which we experiment, because we have explore, experiment, evolve, right? So we have that framework, a framework that I continue to call different things every time that I mention it, because it's evolving, quote unquote. And I know there's some challenges with that. But if you do like what you hear, please consider doing two things for me. Leave a review, good, bad, or indifferent. I like reviews. I like feedback of any sort. So I'm not going to tell you leave a great review, leave a 5-star review, leave whatever star review you choose that matters to you, that is reflective of your experience. And then obviously, if you do like it, recommend the podcast to some other folks so they have the chance to explore, experiment, and evolve on their own. Because if you get a community to do that, it would be a lot easier for all of us to create that better world that we're looking for. And then finally, the best way to lock in any of the things we talk about, any concept that strikes you, resonates with you, connects with you, if you share it and talk to somebody about it in the next 24 hours, it's going to connect that synapse for you. So the more that you talk about it, the more it's going to lock it in for you, the more you're going to be able to use it, and the more of your evolution that will be driven by it. So with that said, let's get going. All right, so this episode is called Check Your State of Mind. Leadership starts in your head. So this ought to be good, right? So state of mind, what is it? Mindset, worldview, mental attitude, called a lot of things. But I like state of mind, and I'm going to explain why I like that. And it's actually defined as a moment-to-moment experience of life as generated by our thinking and feeling. Now, what you think about and how you choose to feel about it, not how it makes you feel. So I want to be clear, nobody makes you feel anyway. You're never made to feel anyway. We choose. This is the first thing I want to point out. Things happen and we choose how we feel about them. We have to own that. It has to be intentional. Let me rephrase. We don't have to own it. And it's okay if you don't want to. Again, everything I say, I'm a messenger, right? I want to evangelize a point of view. And the reason that I talk about these things so passionately is because I believe them, and I believe they can have a positive impact on people's lives. And if enough individual people do this, it changes for the collective, right? Now, having said that, this is not something everybody has to do, must do, is bad if they don't do. That's not true, at least not from my standpoint. I want to share these concepts. I want to bring them to people, and then it's your choice. And if you choose not to, I'm good with that. I just want each person to own that choice. That's it. I just want it to be, I want you to feel in control of your choice. That's, I guess, the main part of this is I want you to feel like you can choose, and you do choose. Even as Rush so famously told us, making no decision is still a choice, right? We still choose. So anyway, back to the topic here. So state of mind, it's how we choose to feel about things that we're thinking about. Now, it's also a temporary condition that can change moment to moment because we can continue to choose. Now, as if we're leaders, and by the way, you know, my definition of leadership is really, people who want to make the world a better place for those they care about. And at a very basic one-word definition is just influence. So anybody you influence, which means that all of us, any day, all day, everybody we come in contact with, we're leading because we can influence them, and we influence people in one of two ways. I don't typically do too many binary things, but this one I do. Every conversation, every interaction, I don't care if it's email, text, phone call, in person, however you want to do it, Zoom call if you want. Any of those, when you're done, somebody feels either built up or torn down after that interaction. Not going to say never, but very rarely does somebody leave an interaction with somebody and just go, meh, I feel the same way I did before we started talking. Doesn't happen. So really what we're trying to do is trying to prime ourselves that for every interaction, or for the majority of the interactions we have, are we going in with the intention, regardless of the content, we want to make this person feel built up. We want to build their self-efficacy. We want to make them feel better, even if it's a challenging conversation. So we must be aware that we choose. Everybody gets to choose, right? Because we direct this for ourselves because we want to positively impact other people. So we're the tool, like we're the deliverer of this thing. And if you think about the impact you can have, how many people you come in contact during the course of a day, it's pretty amazing, right? And it's also exponential because you think about, you keep going out, okay, you interact with, let's just conservatively, let's say 25, 30 people, and that's conservative. And let's say that half of those people walk away from your conversation feeling really good about themselves or whatever you talked about. And so that influences what they do with the 25, 30, 40 people they meet, and so on and so on and so on. You can see how this ripple effect works. Now, what's critical about this is we have this process, and we typically think that something happens, we have a thought about it, and then we decide or choose a behavior, and then we get a result. So we think we're rational and logical. Event, thought, behavior, result. But the challenge is that's not the way it works. The way it works is we missed a spot. We missed a step. So event, thought, behavior, result. Here's what actually happens. Event, thought, feeling about the thought, or we could say emotion about the thought, and then the emotion drives our behavior and the result. So I'm sure you can think of a recent time where that happened, right? Because we didn't choose the emotion, we didn't choose the feeling, we simply felt it, and then that drove our behavior, which may or may not have been the thing that we really wanted. Again, back to choice. Event, thought, behavior, result. Now we have event, thought, feeling or emotion, behavior, result. At each one of those steps, after the event, we get to choose our thoughts. After our thoughts, we get to choose our feeling. After our feeling, we get to choose our behavior. We don't get to choose the result. So you have 3 moments of choice in that process that you can exercise control over, which everyone loves because we all love control. And this, by the way, the secret is this is the only thing you can control in the entire world. You can't control anybody else or anything else because the world does not care what you want, right? We all know this. We strive. Our whole life is really that all of the anxiety we feel in our lives is typically rotated around or centered around this concept of wanting control we can't have. Anxiety is a generalized feeling about uncertainty, which is the world we live in. So anyway, I recently heard a great speaker, Mark Pansiera of the Pacific Institute, and he had this line that just resonated deeply with me. And he said, we must think about what we think about. We must think about what we think about. And that's really what led me to develop this whole episode is just how intentional are we being with our state of mind? Now, there's another saying that kind of goes along that I've said for years. It's on bumper stickers. It's everywhere. And it says, we can't believe everything we think. You shouldn't believe everything you think. And that's really true because we are not our thoughts. I just had a meeting yesterday with a group of people, and we were talking about this very thing, that we often don't stop and think about that because we are not what we think. We're in control of being able to observe and be objective about what we think and whether we actually want to think that or not. So the difference is people that want to lead, and that's an activity, it's a verb. People that want to lead can do it with intention, must do it with intention. Because really, what leading is about creating a compelling future that pulls others to work, to do the work required to realize it. And it's about having that future being very heartfelt for them so that any quote-unquote problem doesn't throw things off course. It's merely a bump in the road. And problems don't get in the way when you want something deeply, when it connects in here to your heart, when it's something meaningful for you that pulls you out of bed in the morning. Problems don't matter because you'll go around, over, or through them. You know people like this. Maybe you are one of these people. And you also know people that are somewhere along that spectrum other than where you are, where any problem becomes insurmountable and a reason to stop. And as leaders in organizations, we often get challenged because we see a lot of that in an organization, and the reality becomes instead of leaning into that person and figuring out what's quote unquote wrong with them, why they're not working harder, maybe we should step back and say, well, is the vision compelling enough? Is the vision connected to them? Did they connect to the vision? Because if that happens, Katie barred the door. Man, you're going to go. People are going to go. You're going to have to keep up with them. They're going to run till tackled, right? And that's why being part of who I am and part of what I preach most of the time is relentlessness. And the reason relentlessness kind of resonates with me is because it is a state of mind. It's a state of mind that can give you the strength to achieve, to survive, to overcome, to be strong when others aren't. It means craving the end result so intensely, the work becomes irrelevant. So think about that. Craving the end result so intensely, the work becomes irrelevant. It doesn't matter what I have to do to get it. I'll do whatever. A lot of you can connect to this. You understand what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what job's put in front of you. It doesn't matter what somebody says needs to be done. It's like, okay, put it on the list. That's the mindset. Over, under, through, around. Doesn't matter. No obstacle big enough. That's relentless, right? My favorite definition of relentless is just oppressively constant. If you are oppressively constant, it's just that methodical. And I know you'll probably hear this. It's that bass tone, that beat of you just don't go away. It's just methodical, constant. You just trudge. It doesn't matter. You just won't stop. Nothing can stop you. I think that's really why zombie movies took off. That's one of the psychological issues of zombie movies. That's why it creates so much anxiety for people to watch those. There's a whole psychology behind it, but part of it is they're relentless. Like they never stop. They don't go fast. They're not running, which is really funny, right? When you watch movies, it's like, well, you could just outrun them because they're obviously not very fast. But it's this: they never stop. They are, by definition, relentless. So I digressed a little bit, but and we can only hope to do this. We can only hope to start leadership in our mind and to check on our state of mind if we're going to spend time pondering. What I mean by that is to consider something deeply and thoroughly. To just think on something, not think on it to do and not think to act, but think. Having time in your calendar, in your schedule to ponder. And again, I'm not talking about hours here. Everybody's like, oh, I don't have time. 5 minutes? I can tell you something. If you sat quietly for 5 minutes and thought about something, you would think it was an hour. That's why time is, as Einstein proved to us, relative. Right? Time is relative. It's relative to what you're doing. And if you stop and you're quiet and you think about something really deeply, really ponder it, really go through some thought experiments, which we'll talk about in a minute. 5 minutes is a long time. And it's a long enough time to start with. You can put a stopwatch up. I'd say do 2 minutes. Just think about one thing. Think about a challenge, a problem, an opportunity, something in your life just for 2 solid minutes without doing anything else, without talking to anybody, without looking at your phone, without being on your computer, without any noise whatsoever. Just sit and think. And then expand from there. So we're not talking about hours. We're not talking about days. We're talking about minutes. Now, this is the kind of the opposite of what we see everybody do because we're always judging and solving and directing. Right? We're always, in all of those things, judging, solving, direct, it's all activity-based. We got to go, right? And you hear this phrase, bias to action. Like we want do. Well, here's the thing. If we're always doing things, when are we thinking? How intentional is the action if we're not thinking about it? Because some of the stuff should take a while. Quite honestly, it shouldn't be done immediately. It shouldn't even be done today or tomorrow or next week or next month. Some of the stuff should be thought about for months before any decisions are made. That's discernment, and that's what you have to figure out as a leader. So we actually see the opposite of this in most of our days. And the other part of this is your brain's a tool, right? And you need to be able to direct it to achieve the objective that you want. And the real amazing part of this is leaders think differently, and so therefore you're able to see the world differently. Because we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And so whatever you think about, whatever your worldview is, whatever your state of mind is, greatly impacts what you see in the world. Because there is no objective view of the world. Every viewpoint of anybody you ever talk to is 100% subjective. It's theirs, and theirs alone. That's why we're horrible at first-person, interviews about when things happen. If they want to get, if they want to see spectators who see an accident and they want to get a report from them and say, okay, what did you see? They interview 5 people and they get 5 different stories down to the colors of the things involved, the colors of the cars involved, who ran the red light, who ran into who. You get 5 different stories. I can't figure of any more proof of how witnesses who see an event and all describe it differently, how that couldn't be supportive of everybody sees the world differently. We can't rely on our own understanding as fact. It means something to you, and it should, but it isn't a fact. It isn't an objective fact. So let's go down a rabbit hole for a minute when we're talking about all of this thinking. So philosophy. So I'm gonna take you down this rabbit hole, and we're gonna come out of the rabbit hole, go around the barn, come back and connect these concepts. All right. So bear with me a minute. So philosophy, its definition, love of wisdom. Now, what's wisdom? Wisdom is accumulated knowledge that's usually applied. Now, this is interesting. Usually applied with a sense of empathy, ethics, and enlightenment. All right. It typically comes from a place of deep understanding and humanity and involves careful consideration of all factors and parties involved in a particular choice. Wisdom. What we would aspire as leaders to exhibit, to accumulate, to share. So I want to walk through that again. Think about this as a definition. Wisdom is a type of accumulated knowledge that's usually applied with a sense of empathy, ethics, and enlightenment. It typically comes from a place of deep understanding and humanity and involves careful consideration of all factors and parties involved in a particular choice. Sounds aspirational to me. I think it's worth pursuing. I think as leaders, we aspire to gather that. We aspire to be wise. Well, you're not wise in a hurry. I think we can all agree to that. And you're not wise 40 times a day because you start selecting the areas that you're going to get involved in. So let's pick a term out of, we know empathy. We've talked about that before. Ethics, we'll get to at some point. Let's talk about enlightenment. And since I've already mentioned philosophy and now we're talking about enlightenment, it makes perfect sense in my mind to go to Immanuel Kant. Now, Immanuel Kant is known as the father of modern ethics. Now, he had this interesting idea. He said enlightenment is a man's emergence from his self-imposed nonage, N-O-N-A-G-E, nonage. Nonage is the inability to use one's own understanding without another's guidance. This nonage is self-imposed if it causes the lack of understanding and indecision and a lack of courage to use one's own mind without another's guidance. So one of the kind of the catchphrases of the Enlightenment, if there was so, or the motto was, have the courage to use your own understanding. So we want to break out of our nonage, right? We want to be able to rely on our own understanding. We want to have the confidence and the courage to act on our own understanding. But we have to be able to define that, right? We have to be comfortable with that. Now, so after Immanuel Kant also had this other thing called the categorical imperative, just as an aside. And that was a way to evaluate your behavior. And what he said was, we should act in a way that by example, we're telling everyone else to act identically. So we don't have to tell anybody. It's kind of like one of my favorite sayings from St. Francis of Assisi, preach the gospel every day and use words when necessary. So Kant said, however you behave, you're essentially telling everybody else that's how they should behave. So it was do as I do, which is a embodiment, which really goes to any concept, philosophy, your philosophical, your state of mind, your leadership philosophy, any of those things. The best way to show it to the world is not to talk about it, but to embody it. Do you do the things that when people can see you from afar that you don't even know are watching, do they know what you're about? Now, what do philosophers do, right? So they do things like I mentioned earlier, a thought experiment. And that, simply put, a thought experiment is creating an experiment in your mind. You come up with a scenario and you contemplate it. Now, I will tell you, you do this all the time. In business, we do it constantly. We do scenario planning. We do planning for next. Like right now, it's September of 2024, so everybody's in planning mode for 2025 right now. So they're doing tons of thought experiments. Now, they're not calling them thought experiments. What we actually do, which is unfortunate, is we plan, and then we plan in a way that is more concrete and conclusive than it should be. So a small digression here is when we plan, we make this underlying assumption, or we imply that the plan has 100% certainty to work. And then we're shocked and dismayed by the end of the first quarter of next year when things didn't turn out the way we thought. Now, we, as Taleb said in his book, Black Swan, and I think he essentially got that from Eisenhower, is planning is indispensable, plans are useless. So planning, the process, indispensable. We should always do it. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, but to come up with a plan and then to think that, to have the hubris to think that that's going to happen and that we can actually make that plan happen, that's where we run off the track, back to our sense of need for control, right? So what's interesting is if, and I think Annie Duke talked about this in a couple of her books, is if we had to put because essentially all we're doing is betting. Her book is called Thinking in Bets. And so if we were to think about this and we're sitting around a table with people planning for next year, it would be great to have somebody say, well, how certain are you on a scale of 1 to 100%? And don't say 100%, because if you do, we're going to fire you, because you cannot be 100% certain that strategy is going to work. Are you 40%, 30%, 70%, 80%? Because if you tell me that, then I can ask questions and I can have you explain, well, if you think that's what we should do and you're only 60% sure, what are the things that give you hesitation? Now, that's a great conversation that we don't have now, because somebody gives you a plan and we're like, oh, great, you gave me the plan. All right, you're committed to this. You're going to achieve it. Yep. Okay, good. We just play this game, and it is a game, unfortunately. Because everybody knows if you're in an organization and you're responsible for putting forth a plan, you're putting forth a plan that you think will get approved. Not one you necessarily believe in, just one that will reduce the number of confrontational conversations you have to have during the budget process. Not healthy, but it works, right? So back to philosophy, because that is a thought experiment. The whole budget process, the whole planning process is a giant thought experiment. Now, if we named it, again, back to words create worlds, if we called it thought experiments, we'd have a different outcome. Because, again, experiments connote failure. Experiment is, I have a hypothesis, which is essentially what a business plan is. It's a very expensive hypothesis. But if we called it these things, if we put different words to it, if we said, this is my hypothesis for how the next year is going to turn out, and here are the experiments, because here's what I'll tell you. Take your budget, whatever you're putting in an Excel document, the numbers, and then say, this is my hypothesis. This is what I think is going to happen. And then whatever you write down as your strategy and tactics, you say, these are the experiments that I want to run to try to prove my hypothesis. My hypothesis being my net operating profit, my revenue, whatever those things are. You say, this is my hypothesis. And what I'm saying is, my experiment is, if we do the stuff over here that I've written down, I think we'll get the thing over here. Because that's what we're doing, in all honesty. But we don't do it like that. We act with certainty that we have to do this. We have to achieve these numbers. There's no turning back. We must go forward. There's no redo. There's no mulligan. Well, I will tell you, there are plenty of mulligans available, because I worked for a very large company a long time ago. And by February, we had to redo the entire year. We had spent from August to November creating all of these intricate budgets and strategies and tactics and reams and reams and reams of paper. And then once January's final numbers came out, we were instructed to take those numbers and reforecast the entire rest of the year, start over again. It happens, right? But here's the thing about all of this. Here's why it matters from if you're going to try to influence people, if you're going to try to do the activity, the verb of leading. How well you think determines how well you lead. If you remember, I said that, our topic today was checking your state of mind. Leadership starts in your head. Well, this is the other side of that. The reason we're talking about any of this, thought experiments and philosophy and pondering and all of these things, is because how well you think determines how well you lead. And I believe that as a leader, you're actually teaching other people how to think. You're in effect a philosophy teacher. I know nobody wants to hear this, but your job, your main function is not to help people get better at their job. You got people for that. You're trying to help people understand how they think and to be critical thinkers. You want them to think big thoughts. You want them to ponder. You want them to do thought experiments about how is this going to work out? If you do X, Y, and Z, what do you think is going to happen? And how certain are you that? Are you 50%, 60%, 30%? There's no wrong answer there. It's just like, I really want to know. And we may go with something that's 30% because that's the best we got. And that's okay, right? But I at least want to know going in. It's almost like, so I'm going to use another philosopher. We're going to talk about Plato in his allegory of the cave. And you can look this up if you want to. But essentially, the short story is a bunch of people were chained to look at the wall of a cave. And there were people behind them that had a fire, and behind that, they were holding up things that made shadows that were cast upon the wall in front of the people sitting with the chains. So the people in the cave thought that the shadows on the wall were the real world. Sound familiar? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to, unshackle yourself so you can get a clear view of the world, because the world ain't on the cave wall. And then you're trying to get everybody else to unshackle themselves as well. And you can't unshackle them. See, I want to be clear on what I said there. Here's the thing. It's learned helplessness. They're not really shackled. They just think they are. They can get up, turn around, and walk outside into the bright daylight and see the world. But oftentimes we don't want that. We just want a reality we can tolerate, that we can pretend about, because the other one's overwhelming. And that's okay. This ain't for everybody. Everybody can, most won't, few do. You choose. As Morpheus said, red pill, blue pill. For everybody. And Cypher wanted to go back. If you remember the movie, at one point, Cypher's like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'll go back. I don't care. And that's okay, right? It's okay. Everybody ain't going to make the trip. But you want those people that want to be unchained, who want to stand up and the shackles will just fall off, you have to understand, you have to question every assumption, because it isn't real. Like, what you believe is not objectively the real world. It is what you believe, which is fine. But you don't believe things because they're true. They're true because you believe them. So that means, right? So follow the logic. If that is essentially true, you can make something else true by believing that. Now, this becomes really powerful as a leader, because what you believe about other people is their truth. Sit with that one for a minute. What you believe about other people is their truth. So if you choose to believe somebody's capable, not capable, good, bad, whatever you're doing as a leader, whatever judgment you're passing, that's their reality. That's the power that you have. But this is it. Like, this is the job, because you want to create thinkers, not doers. There's this great, leaders don't create followers. Great leaders create other leaders. The job is not to create followers. That feeds your ego, but it doesn't move the needle from a human perspective. Leaders create leaders. Now, I'm going to wind this up with the tough part. Here's the tough part as a leader. So, Zach Bryan, I love listening to his music. He's an awesome performer, and his lyrics are fantastic if you haven't heard him. He's got this song called East Side of Sorrow. It's an amazing fucking song. Like, I love the song. Now, there's a line in it that is out of context for what it is. It's meant differently in the song, but it applies to what we're doing here. So what he says is, let it be, then let it go. And the reason I picked that out and it resonated with me is because if you do, in fact, create leaders, if you create thinkers, they are going to challenge you, as they should, because they're thinking. And if everybody's thinking alike, they ain't thinking. So you're not trying to get a bunch of people in the room to agree. If you've got a leadership team in the room that agrees on everything, you got a problem. Now, you can disagree without being disagreeable. Like, that's the goal. But we need that, right? We need other points, alternative points of view. So as a leader, if you start unshackling people and suddenly they start seeing the world differently and they start asking questions, instinctively you're going to push back, because you have been the smartest person in the room, the only person seeing things clearly. Now the veil has fallen from their eyes and they see it clearly. They have opinions too. And if you truly want to raise up leaders and you want to be able to move away from being the hub in the spoke in the wheel of your business, that means these people have to make decisions. But you've been doing this for so long, you're still going to default to being the smartest person in the room. You have to shut up. You have to allow other people to have ideas and make decisions, even if they're not as good as yours. Maybe they're not. I don't know. Even if they're not, you have to decide, what am I really wanting here? Do I want every decision to be perfect because that's how I'll make them, which is a fallacy too. Just nobody tells you. But I see people all the time, leaders that complain about people not taking initiative, not making decisions, not taking action, right? Well, you know why? Because nothing they do or say or any idea they have is ever good enough. It's not that it's bad. You never say, oh, it's a bad idea. You go, well, I think we should do this because it's better than that. Not that theirs is bad, but yours is better. Well, how long does it take before people are like, okay, I get this formula? And I'll tell you a quick story. That happened to me. My dad and I, my dad was one of those people. And he was right most of the time. Like, he knew how to do just about anything around the house, cars, the house, whatever. So we're down at my grandparents' house in Circleville, Ohio one time, and we're moving a freezer. And I'm standing on the front porch with my uncle, with my dad's brother, Clarky. And he was my dad's younger brother by, I think, 7 years. And so I'm standing. Now, one thing, and you don't know my Uncle Clarky, but I saw my Uncle Clarky almost every Sunday for 18 years, and I think I had 2 conversations with him and heard him say 27 words. He was a man of few words. A nice guy, smiled all the time, nice guy, but just didn't talk a lot. So my dad says, hey, back the truck up to the porch here so we can carry the freezer out. So I did. Backed the truck up, got out of the truck, went up, stood on the porch. My dad got off the porch, got back in the truck, and backed it up. And as he's doing it, I just had this puzzled look on my face, and my Uncle Clarky looks at me, he goes, you didn't think you were going to do that right, did you? And I just was like, I guess not. And I don't know how many millimeters difference it got closer, but that happened. It was a real story. Now, I also want to tell you the next thing. My dad's 86. In about 10 years ago, after he had knee replacement and had a couple heart surgeries, he needed help doing a lot of stuff. Well, at one point, I don't know when it happened, it was always he would supervise. At this point, he's even stopped supervising. Like, he didn't even come out and see when things are being done that he would normally do, that he did for years. But he would come out and sit, like we used to put the pool cover on their pool at the end of the season. And so he would come out and sit on the deck and give his 2 cents worth. And, you know, my boys would be with me and my wife and my daughter, and we'd go out and put the pool cover on. And they would inevitably say, "Hey, how does that look?" He goes, "Well, it looks great because I didn't do it." So he got to the point where he's like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm no longer capable of doing this. And I got news for every leader out there. It's going to happen to you in your business. See, we move from like a liquid to a crystallized intelligence over the year. And when we're younger, our minds can crank out tons of data. Like, we can do the heavy lifting of thinking when we're younger. As we age, our brain, our knowledge shifts into more crystallized. It's in that wisdom category where you just can't do the heavy lift of all the calculations. You can discern and you can listen, you can see patterns, which is extremely valuable, but you cannot keep up with the computational power of a younger brain. So don't try. Plus, I got to tell you, I experienced this with a lot of organizations. Most of the leaders have been away from the front line long enough that the assumptions they're making about what's actually happening in the business are not accurate. And it's kind of sad because the people that are on the front line know it, but they can't tell them because it's the emperor has no clothes, right? So at some point you have to make the shift. You have to understand that, well, I haven't done that job for 5 years. We have all these clients I don't know. Maybe it is done differently. Maybe I should listen to other people. But back to Zach Bryan, if somebody says something and you have an instinct to say something that's better, or you want to change it, or you want to offer your thoughts, let it be, then let it go. See what happens. Because what you got to realize is when you do that, it's not serving your goals, because you must always know what you want most and choose the state of mind to ensure your behaviors are moving you closer to that thing, not away from it. Now, everything we've talked about today comes down to one core idea: your state of mind. It's not some abstract concept. It's the moment-to-moment experience of life driven by your thoughts and feelings. The reality is this: what you think about and how you choose to feel not only shapes your actions, but the actions of those around you. How you choose to feel about what happens and what you think shapes not only your actions, but those around you as well. Those actions of the people close to you. And remember, no one is made to feel anything. You choose your reaction. You can't afford, as a leader, to leave that choice to chance. And the state of mind you cultivate directly impacts those you lead, either positively or negatively. You're either building them up or tearing them down. To be quite candid, the problem is most of us get stuck at the feeling stage and don't even realize we've skipped the thought part. We're not acting rationally, we're acting emotionally. But like Mark said, you must think about what you think about. And it isn't just some motivational quote. It's the key to leading with intention. You know, at the end of the day, leadership is not about controlling the room. It's about controlling yourself. And as we're going to go from Zach Bryan to Ice Cube. As Ice Cube told us, it was probably in the late 80s, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself. And that's the real work, isn't it? So here's my final challenge to you. Before your next leadership move, before your next decision, just take a moment, check your state of mind. Are you reacting or are you thinking? Are you being relentless or are you surviving? Because only when you're in the right state of mind can you help other people reach theirs. And until next time, keep thinking, keep leading, and remember, your state of mind is your most powerful tool.